Hello, and welcome to Chapter 15. This is perhaps our most fun chapter. This is a chapter that we're going to be talking about advertising and promotions. So, in Chapter 15, the case study is Crispin Porter, but I'm going to talk more about Victoria's Secret. And the reason I talk about Victoria's Secret is because when we talk about advertising and we talk about, and in this chapter, we're also going to talk about integrated marketing communications. One of the big things is that a brand must have a clear personality. A brand must, work in conjunction with every aspect of promotional material to speak loudly who that brand is. And I think Victoria's Secret does an excellent job of really having a synergy around who they are, what they're about, what they think their audience is going to love, and really making sure that comes through in every aspect of what they do, right? So, for example, when you walk into Victoria's Secret, you're going to see the same models that you would have seen on the stage for their angel show. You're going to see the same image in their front store that you would have seen online and that you would see on maybe the cover of their catalog. They do a really good job of making sure all the puzzle pieces come together so that you really have an understanding of the brand and all of their advertising initiatives come together in that way. So I just wanted to bring up Victoria's Secret because they're a really good example of how a brand has used advertising and wider promotions in a really powerful, strong way. And so advertising, of course, is going to be any paid form of marketing material. And that can run from events to online, social media, um, pure advertising as we know it, which would be your TV, your radio, your print, etc., etc. So that's advertising. Now, when advertising first started, it was really focused on print, right? And so, but now, and it was focused on print. Then it moved, of course, to TV. And print and TV still to this day are some of your most expensive forms of advertising to run like a Super Bowl ad in the millions, to be printed in one of your top magazines, a full page ad in a Vogue or a Cosmo, very, very, very expensive. So even to this day, even a full page ad in any regional newspaper, off the charts expensive, even to this day. And so those are your traditional forms. But since then, we have evolved so much when it comes to marketing. In fact, that's one of the challenges with marketing today, that there's so much clutter. There's so much clutter, and companies have such a hard time breaking through that clutter because, if you think back in the day, there were maybe NBC, ABC, CBS. If you ran an ad, you ran on one, and you ran on one or you ran on all, and everybody was watching all of the above or at least one of them. Now, if you want to run an ad on TV, you have to figure out if you want to do cable networks, if you want to do mainstream, if you want to do, you have anything from Spike to, to CBS, NBC. The list is on. Then you have to decide, do you want to do Netflix? There's so many options, right? But when we are thinking of doing an ad and we're thinking of running advertising, we have to think, okay, what are our objectives? What is it that we're trying to achieve? What is it we want to accomplish? How much money do we have to accomplish that? What kind of decisions we want to make as it pertains to the messaging, who is going to give the messaging, and then, where are we going to air the messaging? And at the end of the day, how are we going to evaluate the success of our campaign? So all of these things are things that we have to consider. Now, when we talk about setting the objectives, you know what I always say, it has to be smart, specific, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And so you have to make sure you are very specific in what you want to accomplish with your objectives. But you also have to decide, what is it you want to do? Do you want to, where does you want to move this consumer? Remember we talked in chapter 5, I believe, we talked about the consumer decision making process. Am I grabbing this consumer and trying to reach this consumer when the need recognition stage, or are they just before that point to purchase? So am I just building awareness? Am I just informing them? Am I trying to persuade them to do a particular activity? Or do I just want to remind them that this is something that they like to do, or this is a brand that they're familiar with, or this is a brand they want to purchase to make that jump? It all, we have to be very specific because different brands. Also, remember we talked about the product life cycle. So in this chapter, we just tying everything in. And in the product life cycle, remember I said that you use different forms of advertising depending on where you are in the product life cycle. So if you are at a stage where you're just brand spanking new, people are not aware about the product, then that's one set of advertising strategies. And if you're at a stage where you're at mature product, or you're in the cash cow stage, and that's a different set of advertising. So you have to figure out your objectives based on what it is you want to do. Then, boy, you can't do anything unless you got the cash for it, right? You gotta have the guacamole. So if you don't have that money, then you're gonna have to be much more creative. Maybe you're gonna do guerrilla advertising at that point in time, which is very out of the box type of advertising. Guerrilla advertising. If you think of flash mobs, or if you think of IKEA, one time they set up an entire bus stop with a couch and a lamp and curtains and all these things. That's guerrilla marketing, right? It's out of the box thinking. It doesn't have to be very expensive. Now you could go super elaborate, but in a lot of instances, you're very simple. So if you do guerrilla marketing, that's an option. And a lot of times that's because people don't have a big budget. But it all depends on where you are in the life cycle, where you are trying to move on the buyer readiness platform, how much competition, differentiation you have between you and an alternative. Are you known for certain things, et cetera, et cetera? So you have to really kind of think big and think about how you're going to position yourself in the minds of the consumer, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that budget really does matter, right? Because if I don't have a lot of money, I can't do anything. I can't do what we call mainstream advertising. And I'll give you an example. So I used to work in advertising, and I was in charge of all media and TV production and video production for the tourist board in Trinidad. And one of the things that the tourist board in Trinidad, one advantage we had over other Caribbean islands, was that because Trinidad has a strong oil industry, we don't really need tourism. I think ultimately we will, because there's a finite amount of oil in the ground. But most of the other countries, really tourism is their biggest money maker. And so they have to have tourists coming to their shows. Trinidad doesn't. And so because we were not so dependent on tourism, we were able to pick the type of tourism that we wanted to have for tourists to come to our shows. So we decided we don't want mass tourism. We don't want to try to get everybody and anybody who wants to come to the Caribbean to come to our shows. And so because we don't want to have mass tourism, you're never going to see, you might see an ad in for sandals for Jamaica, or you might see a major ad on TV for coming to Atlantis in Bahamas, but you're never going to see one of those ads to come to Trinidad. We have, I think, the second largest carnival in the world, but you still would not see a mainstream TV ad because we don't have the budget for that. And so we have really engaged in niche marketing. So we do ecotourism, we do dive tourism, we do weddings and honeymoons. And so we will place much smaller ads in magazines. We'll do it in maybe National Geographic. We'll have one in, a weddings and honeymoons type of magazine. And we're going to have a dive magazine where we will do an ad. But we're going to be a lot more creative and a lot more strategic and really kind of do sharp shooting in terms of how we try to reach our audience, because we don't have the budget. So because we can't do a big, massive ad campaign. We have to be very strategic and do really small initiatives. And so all the things that we're going to come up with have to be creative. They have to be out of the box, because our ad budget is going to be different to that of a Bahamas, that of a Jamaica. So when we are thinking about an ad itself, how are we going to produce the ad itself? Then there are all these different things that we have to think about. What type of advertising do we want to do? And here there's some basic execution styles. So slice of life, what is that? You show a mom in a kitchen and she's making dinner, and you show her, stirring the mac and cheese. That's a slice of life. Or, when we talk about lifestyle, you show a couple and they're traveling the world, and you see them in this location and that location, and you're showing luggage because this is the lifestyle. Or, with fantasy, I think Sandals, when they're advertising their beaches and so forth and their resorts, they talk about fantasy. They show this, opulence, and this getaway, and this where butlers are walking out into the ocean to feed you lobster. It's kind of make believe. That's, I go to the Caribbean all the time. That's not most people how most people interact with the Caribbean. Then there's advertising that completely changes your mood, makes you laugh or makes you sad or makes you pensive. Then you might have advertising where they focus on a gimmick, they focus on a slogan or a jingle. And so you have that jingle in your head and you're constantly thinking about that. Or you may have advertising like Geico, where they use a gecko, and so they have a personality symbol. Or you might have an ad where they're talking about, 1 out of 5 dentists choose us. Or you might have an ad where they run an experiment and kind of show, all those as seen on TV, the guy who is giving you that thing that seals, and he's showing you he has a boat and it's filling with water, and he just pulls that sealant on it, and boom, it's gone, right? So no more water. So you might have all these different types of ways that you can create an ad. Some are more effective than others. It all depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Like humor helps you to remember the ad, but you may not remember the product, right? Emotions tend to have much more lasting appeals. So it all depends on what you want to do. But when you are developing the strategy, you have to think about, okay, who's my audience? What type of media do they typically interact with, right? Am I dealing with an audience where they only just watch Netflix, they never watch mainstream TV? Or am I dealing with an audience where every night they're watching CNN? I have to know, because I'm going to pick my media vehicle. And what is my media vehicle? Am I going to do in Cosmo Magazine? Am I going to be on CNN? Am I going to be on NBC? Am I going to go on Netflix, or am I going to be on social media? That's going to be your media vehicle. And then you have to figure out timing too, right? You have to figure out, if you're going to do radio, do you want morning ads? Do you want evening ads? When you're going to run, how long are you going to run these ads for? Do you want a 15-second ad, a 30-second ad? Are you going to run it for 2 weeks, for 5 weeks, for 1 week, for 2 days? Right? You have to think about all, like, how long you're going to run a campaign. Even on social media, you have to think about how long you're going to run a campaign. Are you going to really juice it up and increase how much you're bidding for your audience closer to your event, or closer to when you really want to spike the sales? You have to think about timing. You have to think about what media, when you want to put the ad on media, for how long, how you're going to portray it. And then you have to think about how you're going to evaluate it. And this, in the past, this wasn't a big thing. Now, this is a mega thing. Analytics is the name of the game. You have Google has analytics. Every single social media platform has analytics. We all, when you have a website, you have to check the analytics. And what are analytics? Analytics tell you how effective your ad campaign is, how many people are looking at it. So on social media, we can see how many people clicked on an ad. Where were they coming from when they clicked on that ad? Did they see it on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or where did they see that ad? And then what else did they do on your website when they clicked over to that? Did they buy anything when they clicked on the ad? So you have to look at all of these things, and these things help you to figure out what is working and what is not. And there are all kinds of vehicles for measuring. Like, for example, there's something called Sprout Social, and Sprout Social measures the effectiveness of social media. Then you have Nielsen ratings. Nielsen will look at how many people are watching a particular thing. So when you hear an announcement in news that how many million people watch the Super Bowl, they got that from Nielsen ratings. Nielsen ratings, particularly now with cable, they know how many channels, how many TVs in various households were tuned into a particular channel, a particular show on that channel. So Nielsen ratings can say to you, your um, ad was aired during the Super Bowl and 30 million people were watching the Super Bowl at that point in time. So that's how they are going to track the effectiveness. Now, that's how they're tracking how many people are seeing your ad. But just because I see your ad doesn't mean that I buy anything out of your ad. So we will then kind of cross pollinate Nielsen ratings with what we call scanner data. And what is scanner data? When you go to a supermarket, when you go to a store and you buy anything and they scan it, all of the sales end up in the computer and you can track it. And it's called scanner data, where you can track trends over periods of years, months, weeks, days, hours, etc., etc. Now, small companies versus large companies, have different approaches to advertising because, like I said, mass media, TV, radio, print, these are very expensive forms of advertising. So sometimes small companies are only able to do like, flyers, or they might do something on social media, but they don't typically have the budget that a Doritos has, for example, where they can do massive campaigns. And then when we talk about going international, then you have to really think about, can you use the same campaign that you're using in America? Can you just do voiceover and change the language and run that in Peru? Probably not, right? Coca-Cola has this standard that they say, think global, act local. So what they will do is they will have a script, and they will run that script across the globe. So maybe it is athlete hands young boy Coca-Cola, shoot to athlete playing sport. So if that athlete is in India, then their sport of choice is going to be cricket. If that athlete is anywhere in South America, then their sport of choice is going to be soccer. If that athlete is in the US, then most times their sport of choice is either going to be NFL, it's either going to be football, or it's going to be basketball for the most part. So you have a lot of international films. That's how they do international advertising. They have a standard script, but they adjust and adopt and adapt to international frameworks and culturally what is applicable to an international market. So then when we talk about sales promotions, there are different ways that we can promote something, right? And you can decide that you're going to do sales promotion on the front end with the retailer, where you might give them what we call discounts and corporate arrangements and allowances, where, for example, let's say Coca-Cola knows that from scanner data, they know that Coca-Cola sells a lot more in the summer than it does in the winter. So they may have an incentive for Rayleigh's or Safeway or Target, where they will say, if you will buy, if you normally buy 500 cases, if you buy 600 cases, we will give you, if you buy 100 cases extra, then we will give you that 100 cases at a reduced price. Or we will give you all 600 cases at a reduced price. So the idea is that they will give you that discount to the retailer up front in the hope that they will pass on that discount to the consumer later on, right? And so when you're running these sales promotions, what are you going to do? Now, a lot of companies run into problems, and I mentioned this before, that like JCPenney become companies known to be in full-on sale mode 24 hours, meaning they can't go back to regular price. Whereas you have a Macy's where, for Memorial Day, they'll have a mega sale, and then next week it's back to normal. That same thing that you got for $30 is now right back up to $99.95. So you have to think about, different companies have different promotions and they're known for different things. Then you have what we call promotional tools. And promotional tools are important because people use promotional tools in different ways, right? So sometimes you have samples that gets you, like you might buy one and then get a sample. You might buy a conditioner, you get the sample for the shampoo. Or you might have coupons where, some people are really big into coupons. So you might say, why would they use coupons? Why would they not just do a sale? Well, because with coupons, you get the people who are price sensitive. They will find the coupon and they will pay the coupon price. But then you other people who are not price sensitive, if you did a sale, then everybody will pay the reduced price. If you do coupons, those who are price sensitive will pay the reduced price. And those who are not going to. They are fine paying the price and you get full profits from them. Cash rebates are something similar. A lot of times people will quote the cash rebate price. So if you go to tires and they say, oh, there's $100 rebate on this, so you only get it for $500 for the 4 tires. Really and truly, you now have to send in a rebate, and that process, a lot of people are not going to go through. So it really is $600 because there's $100 rebate, but they quote you the rebate price. And then there are all kinds of things where, we give you the premium package, or you get rewards, or you get additional points if you buy this version or that version. Then we might say, we have this sweepstakes going on or a game going on, and you can pay a little bit more and get this version. I mean, there are all these incentives. Like when McDonald's is doing Monopoly, more people are shopping at McDonald's because more people want a chance to win the Monopoly game. So different companies engage in different sales promotions depending on what their needs are. And so, this is what I was talking about, trade promotion tools up front, where you have discounts and allowances and so forth and so on, versus business to business, where you might have different types of promotions. But the important thing when you're thinking about, do I want to do a promotion or not, is what's the size? What are the conditions for that promotions? How are you going to evaluate whether or not that promotion was effective? And then how long you want to run that promotion for. Now, we've been talking about advertising, and remember, that's what you pay for. But the other end of this is public relations. And public relations is free, almost like free advertising, but it's a little bit different, right? So if I have a news crew come while I'm doing an event and they take pictures and they interview people and then they run a story, that's PR. It's free, but there's some problems with it because we can't always dictate with PR when it's going to happen. And so we don't have control over the timing. It's not very flexible. I did an event with students in Stockton. We put on a festival. One year, we had reporters come out. The festival is always on a Saturday. One year, reporters came out on a Wednesday. They spoke to me. They spoke to students. They spoke to people in the community. They ran a story on the Friday. Tons of people saw it and came. The next year, they ran it on the Sunday after the event. So that's part of the problem with public relations. Is so unpredictable. You cannot kind of foresee how it's going to work for you. But there's so many different forms of PR, right? You can do interviews on TV. You can do public relations announcement, like for free announcements on the radio, depending on the cause, right? So it all depends on how you want to do it. When Twitter was just out for like a year, they were having a problem. They were basically on life support, I would say, because 79% of the people who had an account just had opened this account but had never tweeted once. And if they had continued like that, they would have to probably close Twitter. So they went on a massive public relations campaign where, what did they do? They went to various different media outlets and they showed them how companies were using Twitter. So they talked about the fact that, food trucks were tweeting out their locations. Clubs were tweeting when they had a celebrity sighting. And politicians would tweet what their perspective was on a particular law. So when they started, and almost they flooded every outlet. So they did TV, they did radio. They just went on a massive PR campaign to get the word out about how to use Twitter. And what happened? People started to use Twitter. So PR can be really effective, but it's not always as predictable as advertising, because if I'm paying for an ad, I know when that ad is going to run, how long it's going to run for, what is in that ad, where it's going to be aired, et cetera, et cetera. PR is a little bit dicey. You don't have those guarantees. Nonetheless, it's a legitimate form of advertising, and there's so many forms of PR, right? Everything from speeches to news articles to events to people post photos to social media. There are all kinds of PR. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that PR and advertising are very, very different. You pay for advertising. You have a lot more flexibility. You can time it when you want, and you know when it's going to be there, how it's going to be portrayed. But you don't always have those options with PR. And that's it for chapter 15.